I'm going to stand from here. I think it's much easier. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Ephraim. Thank you all for coming. I will give a snapshot view on the Stockade and Tower campaign from 1936 to 1939. A word about myself. I live in the north of Israel, and I serve as a reserve officer in the Northern Command. I retired a few years ago, and as I retired, it was the COVID, and immediately afterwards, unfortunately, we've been at war, so I've been serving continuously in the IDF since 7th of October 2023, and I serve in the north, in the vicinity of Svat. And so this is very close to me, this whole question of more about, I would say, the north and how you take care of the borders, how you safeguard the borders, which is something we've been dealing with for many, many years. And I will try and explain where some of these ideas are coming from, some of these concepts. And of course, at the end of the day, we're talking also about values. The Stockade and Tower campaign in Hebrew in Choma Migdal. It was a campaign that was started in 1936. The date is, of course, related to the Arab Revolt, or it's one of the Arab revolts, the big Arab revolt that occurred in Palestine, Military Palestine. And I will try and explain about this concept itself and the innovation side of it, and how you can actually see through this very important phase in the development of the IDF, which would be the IDF in the future, this development of how we protect ourselves and innovation and, of course, initiative. I'm going to see if it seems to be jumping here, as long as we can see. Okay. Did it work? No. We have a problem. No. Okay. So I have a very, when we speak about the Stockade and Tower campaign, there is a myth about it. And I'm going to show you two examples. On the left-hand side, my right-hand side, it's a song. I'm going to save you the song. It's a very, I would say, a martial song. It's about one of the songs written in 1939 at the end of the Tower and Stockade. And the man who wrote it was a very famous poet in Israel, the name of Alterman. 25 years later, already the state of Israel, we're talking about the middle of the 60s, the stamps come out, speaking about, again, you can see the Tower and the Stockade. What's so important about this is that it's basically, there is a myth about how this happened. Many people speak about the fact that the British were against it, so you had to build it very, very quickly. In fact, most of it was coordinated with the British themselves, who were interested in safeguarding different elements. If it was the border, or of course, the petroleum line, much like today. A lot of what was happening in Palestine was related to security and energy and pipelines. Then it was more about oil. Today, of course, it's a lot about gas. But the myth itself tells the story about us, basically us as the Jewish side, fighting the mandatory government itself, or that truthfully up until 1938, the government actually assisted in this. And why am I telling this story? Because it's a very successful story, and it's an icon. It's an icon in the Israeli society. All right, thanks. So I'm going to try and see if this will work. And this is an important bit, and this will be my first little skit for you. So you can see that many in Israel recognize this myth itself. And over here, it's a promotion actually about the Stockade, the Tower and Stockade campaign, and basically about how this was done. It's a translation, of course. I'm going to tell you the story in a second, but I want to try and explain to you just how much this is important. It's an icon, it's a common history, it's a common language as well. You can see over here about how the story is told. But what's interesting about this is that it's actually told as a commercial. As a commercial on Israeli TV. Now the story itself. Sorry, I keep getting it the wrong way, yeah? Why it's moving. Okay. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the framing of the situation itself. We're talking about 1936. What is very, very clear that the landscape is changing in Palestine. This basically delineates the Jewish immigration to Palestine. You can see a major jump from 1920 or now about 1936 over here. And the reason that this is happening is because that in Europe, many of the Jews are leaving Europe and they're coming here. They have no other place to go. They are being refused immigration into the United States from the early 20s, and so they are coming over here. The response on the Arab side is, of course, they're not happy about it. That's an understatement. And we're seeing in the 30s, of course, the whole question of fascism all over the place, especially when it comes to the Middle East as well. But the Arab revolt itself starts to energize, starts to coalesce around about 1935. Another side, of course, is strategy. It's something that sometimes we ask, where is the strategy? Who are the strategists? Very important man over here. Although many people don't realize it. We're speaking about the Haganah, of course, in defense and military side, but a very important man. The chief strategist of this whole idea of the Israeli borders is a man called Moshe Sharet. And I will speak a little bit about him. But this picture is also very important because what you see in this picture is you see Mr. Sharet. He's leading basically the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the then state, working for the Sukhnut. This man over here is the head of what we would call pre-state Jewish intelligence, a man named Reuven Zaslani. And this man over here is a British officer. And it's very important to understand that something that sometimes we tend to forget in Israel is that we don't do anything alone. You have to work with others, you have to cooperate. So this room is very, very important. And that's always been my understanding, and I think it's something that I've taken with me into my professional life and my personal life. The other side, of course, is operational execution. The whole idea of the tower and stockade was prefabrication. It's about building it in one place, maybe in a kibbutz, maybe in Haifa, in a shed, putting it all on a truck. In one night, driving in a convoy to a certain position. The land had been bought before, about the members of the Sukhnut normally, or the Jewish National Fund actually. And in one night, the whole thing is built. Stockade and the tower. The stockade to protect the people inside. The tower to give it some sort of higher protection, what we would call overwatch, but also to be able to communicate from the tower using either a lantern, some sort of a torch, or in the day using flags and other such things. I'm going to try and hopefully I will not make a mistake now. No, I didn't. The quotes over here are very interesting because we are talking about 1936. The Arab revolt has started. It's not going to be a history lesson, but what happens during 1936 is that the British mandate come to an understanding that they cannot basically fulfill the mandate. There is definitely an understanding that there is tension, there is a clash, there is a challenge. On the one hand, you have the Arabs, the Arabs that live here, that basically are not happy about what's happening here. And on the other hand, you have the Jewish immigrants, or if you want to call them refugees. This is basically the immigration, the bigger immigration mainly from Western Europe, many of them from Germany. And the amount of Jews in Palestine raised from about 100,000 to 400,000, as I showed you on the previous graph. This man, by the way, I don't think anybody recognizes him today. This man is called Izzadin al-Qassam. The name might seem familiar to you because we are dealing still with Qassams today and such similar variations coming out of Gaza and Hamas. But he is actually a Syrian. He was born in northern Syria in a town called Jabla. But he was he chose to leave because the French didn't like the fact that he was revolting against them. So he came and he started to work his ideology in Haifa. He started a terrorist activity against the Jewish presence, mainly against the Jews, and he was killed in 1935, not far from a place called Afula, those who know about it. Why is this so interesting? Because we are speaking mainly about the areas of the borders, the peripheral areas, not so much about Tel Aviv, which was the Jewish presence was quite strong. We're speaking mainly about the borders. The quotes over here, we don't have the time, but the quotes over here are taken from the 1936 Peel Partition Plan, which was basically the understanding on the British mandate side. There is no point to try and have these people living together, the Arabs and the Jews. We have to split them. This is the first time the partition plan is put forward, what some people today would call two-state nation or two-state solution. What's interesting about it, when you look at these information, when you go through the report of 1937, July 1937, you see that some things keep on repeating themselves. Failure of intelligence. The Arabs have a certain, of course, idea what they want, and the Jews have something that they want, and of course some sort of international obligation to the Jewish solution itself. I mentioned before that Mr. Sharet is very, very important. This is a result, of course, of the Peel Commission. They decide to basically divide up the mandatory Palestine between the Jews, the Arabs, and an international boundary, which is this one over here, which will be under the control of the British. What's interesting about it is that Mr. Sharet, who actually meets with the commission and gives his talks, he speaks about it, and he says the borders of the land will not be determined by historical claims, which is what we had basically, that was the basic strategy up until then, but rather by the points we held. Our task is now to seize and settle, and that's where we meet this whole idea, this whole concept of the stockade and the tower. You buy the land, which has been bought up over many, many years. It's normally going to be in very, very inaccessible areas, quite dangerous to be there, and of course, not really under government control. And we will go out there at night, we'll put up these points, and between 1936 and 1939, 52 points were put up on the map. They were basically dressed, they were basically formed, they were basically, I would say, the contour of the map of Israel in 1947. That's when we see again the whole idea of partition. The other side, on the one hand, you have strategy, which is definitely a political idea. It's not military. The military work for the strategy. Sometimes we forget that. But on the other side, the practitioners were very, very interesting men. The man who actually did the planning himself was a man named Yochanan Ratner. He was born in Ukraine, which is always very interesting. A lot of innovation coming out of Ukraine today as well. Unfortunately, the war is still going on. But there is a war there. But Mr. Ratner was a very, very talented architect. He worked in the Technion in Haifa. And his day job, if you want to say, was working for the Haganah Planning, Central Planning Committee. He was also the chief of the Haganah, if you would call it the chief, the underground, in the 1938 to I would say, early 40s. Ratner, he is the one who basically looks at this plan, this whole idea of about creating something. And he says they bring in the plan. Who brings in the plan? Like anything else in Israel, it starts from the bottom. It's a startup. Members of a kibbutz, this kibbutz that exists today, it is called Nir David. It was then called Tel Amal. I don't know how many people have had a chance to go to the area of Bet She'an, but there's a lovely park there, and those who like kangaroos can meet kangaroos as well there. It's all in the same kibbutz. Over here you can see Gangaroo Zoo. I don't get any money. I have no shares in the Gangaroo, but it's quite a nice place to be. But right next to it is a very nice park over there. Although it's quite full, it's a question of taste, but you're more than welcome. Also interesting enough over there is this Choma Migdal, which is the museum, which looks like this. And if you ever get a chance, you can get a 3-in-1, I'm sure, ticket. It's not about that today. The story that I'm telling you is that the member of this kibbutz want to move to the land that has been bought. And they have an idea. This is the man himself. His name is Shlomo Gur. He's from the kibbutz. He starts to push. He starts to advocate. I want to go and build the settlement there. The point that they need is a plan. The whole idea about the tower, he comes from an architect. He was also born in the Ukraine. He's a very talented man. He built many buildings around Tel Aviv. I will not bore you with showing all of them. But he comes with this idea of the Scouts Tower. Because they had every Scout jamboree, you build the tower. He planned them. And so they take the idea of the Scouts Tower. You can see this tower and this tower are quite familiar. They're quite similar. And so these men from the bottom, with Ratner basically approving the plan, they go to the first place, is called Tel Amal, near David, in December 36. That is the first time they do it. They prefab everything. They go out at night in the convoy. They build the kibbutz, and they stay there. Of course, it's under attack, but it's able to sustain itself. This is what it looks like. You could see again the tower. You have the torch at the top, or the lantern. You have the stockade, and you have the tower, and you see around it, you have a barbed wire fence because they want to keep away hand grenades. I'm nearly finished. What's interesting, though, is, and I'm wrapping up my very short lecture, is this N sign that you can see over here. This is where they basically focus most of the initiative of the stockade and tower. You can see it's along the coast, which was quite strong, but it's all about the borders. The other piece they want to go to is the Lebanon, where I live, not so far away from that border. And so the next big phase is pushing out to the Lebanese border in a place called Hanita. And Hanita is nothing new. The name itself has been around for some time. And if we were to go to Tyre, we have not gone to Tyre. We're not going to Tyre as far as I know, but maybe we have been to Tyre before. but we're not going this time, looks like it. But the fact is that Hanita is on the border, and this basically, wherever you put down, as Mr. Charette had said, where you build, where you plant, where you grow, you will have a border. You need to look out of it. This is the way, basically, they are going up to Hanita. It was a very big operation, done in one night. And very interesting enough, that operation itself, that execution, you have in the center a very important man as well for the Haganah, a man named Yitzhak Sadeh. You may hear about him during your tour. This is Mr. Dayan. Mr. Dayan, General Dayan if you want. He has no patch on because he has not been wounded yet. And this man is a man named Yigal Alon. He will also be both of them, of course, will be very important commanders in the late 40s and leading up to the Israeli independence, and then they will be leading politicians. July 1941, Hanita will be the launching point for an Australian advance against Vichy France in Lebanon. Comes to make my point that settlements, communities, borders are very, very important. And again, it's about working with others. This is about the Australians themselves coming out of Hanita, and that's where General Dayan will lose his eye, by the way. Finishing up. So the Stockade campaign, 52 sites then. What are our main key takeaways? What are our lessons for now? So first of all, it seems quite clear. Leadership and strategic opportunities are very, very important. It's not always so clear at the time who the leaders are and what the opportunities are. But in 1937, there was a very, very clear understanding what they need to do, where to focus on. This whole idea of startups and processes is very, very important. On the one hand, you want to start from the bottom and push. On the other hand, you have to make sure you have a clear strategy and a clear process. And last but not least, active self-defense and strong borders is something that has been with us since 1920, but definitely since 1936, 1937, and as we are today. So with that, I conclude my very, very concise, very, very brief, and thank you very much.